All right. We are now live. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us here at the Elemental Collision. My name is Dave Graham. This is an attempt to do something a little bit different. And the reason why we want to do something a little bit different is plain old podcasts are boring as fuck. So, what we're doing today is you got to put up with me and my little buddies here. Irish moonshine. We're going to be talking a little bit about the edge, which is completely boring to a lot of you non-technical folks out there, but it's worth mentioning. And figured that, for all intents and purposes, we keep it here and we start talking about it and actually understand what it is, what it is and why it actually matters to everybody. So first, I'd like to start off with the concept of what is the edge, right? You just mentioned it's not the guitarist from U2, right? Even though he's a phenomenal guitarist, I think he's pretty damn good. Others would, disagree, but the edge is much more than just a name or place or a thing, right? A lot of what we refer to is you have my employer, for example. And none of this is to reflect upon my employer by any way, shape, or form, but what you have is you have the concept of edge, core, and cloud, right? So cloud is the Amazons, the Microsofts of the world, the Googles, right? Oracle even, who's obviously playing in there. You have this edge, core to cloud concept, right? So there's people that are out there that service and provide these, what we call infrastructure as a service or platform as a service, right? Service, not surface. But the real major goal here is, they provide a collection of tools, a collection of infrastructure that you don't see, or a software that you don't actually own, right? You're buying a service from them, so Salesforce. Then you have what's considered core data center or an enterprise data center, right? It's just where all your servers line up. It's nothing fancy, Dell, HP, Lenovo, any of these companies provide servers. You walk into this, you see a set of racks, some network connectivity between them, server, storage, and networking. It's everything you ever knew, right? And you're going to run some kind of applications on top of that, like Exchange or SQL or something similar to that, right? It's something that you're always used to. It's assets that you own. It's things that are in place and where you believe to be, it's your property, right? You have things like these little guys that are installed in your, yes, I do have props, network cards. This is Intel Ethernet card, dual Ethernet card. This is connected to, servers connected to other things, right? Pop it into something like this, which is a server main board, right? And you have a whole bunch of these things running all at once, and they're connected. They have an application that runs on top of them, and your company makes money, and everybody goes home happy, right? So that's usually what everything's always been, right? You've always had this, data center somewhere, right? An enterprise business. I call it Aon or IBM or choose your poison, right? It's out there. There's always been a business that's been using these type of pieces of equipment, right? So you have that. And then what you're doing is sorry, I forgot to turn my phone off. You go out there and you see everybody is walking around with cell phones. This is my prop for cell phone. It's my iPhone. And you realize that all of a sudden, most of what you do and most of what you interact with is no longer laptops or desktops. I mean, I'm shooting this on the desktop, right? I got my little webcam and my monitor, and I'm talking to you. I got a headset on, nice wood cans here with a microphone, whatever. But the idea that I'm doing this from a fixed location is kind of different now, right? It's no longer the same thing as we've come to expect, and so there's been a lot of changes here. And part of that change is what we're calling this edge, right? I'm not in a room with a ton of servers just running around me. I'm not in the cloud somewhere, even though my data may be stored there. I'm living on the edge. You know, I suppose that's an Aerosmith song too, right? Yeah. There's all kinds of bad references here. So this edge becomes interesting. You know, the way that we look at it is anything that's outside of the core data center, anything that's outside of the cloud, right? No one owns the edge. You know, they can come up with a marketing shtick that says, "Oh, we own the edge." Well, no, you really don't, because unless you own these devices plus, any number of, smart thermostats or agricultural devices or anything like that, you don't own anything. You own 1%, right? Even Apple in its greatest heyday, they may own a certain large amount of the market for these type of devices, but they're really not. That's it. They don't own IoT devices, right? So this begs the question. So what exists out in the edge? So a lot of what we're seeing, a lot of what I tend to define it as, cell phones, obviously. IoT, so Internet of Things, right? So the Nest thermometer, your TV that, you're not your TV. Your TVs can be Internet of Things too. My TV is connected to my wireless system. It pulls down, streaming video, right? It's an Internet of Things type thing. It pulls it down from the cloud, and I'm able to consume it here where I sit. Smart refrigerators, smart meters, right? We have these things. Yeah, it's mind-boggling everything that's connected together. It's not necessarily a good thing, mind you, and we can talk about that towards the end. But all these kind of devices are there. Smart vehicles, believe it or not, your Tesla is a device that sits on the edge. Not the edge of safety, because I won't go so far as to say that they're dangerous. But you get the point. So, that Tesla receives over-the-air updates. My car receives over-the-air updates, for goodness sake. My GPS gets updated as it goes along. So you have this concept of a consumer or data generation type ecosystems. What we do is where we sit out and what we do on that side. People are pinging me on the cell phone, which is terrible. I should turn this shit off. Anyway, so all that to be said, the edge is an area I simply, refer to as anything, again, outside of the cloud, outside of the data center, where data is created, transformed, and consumed. So let's go through those three parts. Data creation. Hold on. Let me pull my phone up. All right. I've got the camera going. And I'm switching it to selfie mode, and I'm going to take a picture. That's me. Yeah, that's me. So what you've just seen is data creation. That's boring, right? But everybody going through in their Snapchats every day, Snapchat, Instagram, whatever, Facebook. We are creating out of just standard living tissue, out of everything that is us. We're creating every single day trillions upon trillions of bytes of data, right? We are a data generating species, right? It doesn't even matter if it's electronic. We are data generating individuals, right? So we're out there. We are, generating data. Now, electronically, we do that a lot through cell phones. What are some of the other things that we generate data through? Our cars. If we go into hospitals, we're generating data through the various systems and meters and devices that are attached to us, MRIs, PET scans, those type of things. Even when I go into my doctor's office and I step on that scale, that's smart scales that are attached to something that reads that data back. It's creating data. It's logging that into a database, an EMR, and a patient database. So every single day, what we're doing is generating data. So I got a question coming in from a friend of mine, so give me a second here. That's not what I wanted. Sorry, getting a little bit familiar with the interface here. Live! All right. Cool. Get some other yokels in here. Ask some questions. Um, so every day we're creating data. We're doing stuff with data. It's good stuff. Hopefully, you know. Um, telco media entertainment, right? We're making movies. We have people that are going out there and recording content. All this stuff's being done. So that's the creation aspect of it. And if we look at more industrial type systems, we look at agriculture, rain sensors out in fields. We look at combines. One of my favorite YouTube channels is a company called Welker Farms, and Welker. Welker is a great example of an agricultural firm that actually does, uses IoT like sensors. They do a lot of, and I can evidently not multitask. Still awake. They use a lot of these kind of agricultural sensors to do, fields. How they harvest their fields, how they plant their fields. They have the ability to watch low spots, watch high spots in terms of moisture in areas. Areas that are available for what they need to do, right? So there's a lot of that aspect. Those are kind of industrial usages of that. And we look at smart cities or digital cities, right? Depending on how you want to phrase it. I think smart digital cities is a good combination as well. You look at sensors that are driven by stoplights, right? So you pull up, you ever seen those rectangles or squares that have been cut in there? That's a sensor. So what you're really looking at is you're interacting with a device within a city. Let's say that sensor is then coupled to a meter. That meter is then going to make some decisions based on, flow of traffic, and it will change lights. We all see that happening, all right? So obviously you can flick that light whenever an ambulance comes by, or the fire department, or a police station, right? So we all see that, especially here in America, where our stoplights are keyed that way. But you have all that kind of interaction there. Smart meters, same thing. Smart grid, right? So all those grids are connected. My meter reader for my apartment complex doesn't even get out of her car anymore. All they do is they drive by, and they have a sensor, a directional antenna, a directional array on top of their vehicle that points at where the meters would be between the buildings, and is able to read them from there, read them from the car. All they do is they literally just creep along at 5 miles an hour, 3 miles an hour, creep, bang, and they have my reading for the month. When they do that, that's, they're interacting with the device. That's suddenly now that data is created. So these are industrial type applications of usage. It's not to say that the commercial side or the consumer side is so important. This gets used in industry and used in business all the time. So that's the data creation side of the edge. So this is, again, a lot of, if you look at business, and we'll approach this from a business mindset here for a second, a lot of business is using this based on, they build their business based on the data creation process, right? Instagram, Snapchat, it's all, their business is built on the concept of data creation. Why? Because next step in that process is transformation. So when we create data, that's one thing. When we get all that data together, then we got to transform it into something useful, right? And now here's where things become interesting. Think of transformation as like applying filters. It's very simplistic. But translation takes something in, if it goes from left to right here, if it takes something in on this side, it does something to it, and then it creates an output that is different. It doesn't have to be markedly different, but it's different nonetheless. So what you have is my original source. I could, again, I'll go back to my ugly mug here. You got my ugly mug? There's my picture. Now, I hit that edit button. It just brightened me up a little bit. I hit the little magic wand in that corner. Now, when I go, that's a transformation process, right? Super simplistic. But the reality of that situation is that that's what we do every day. We apply a Snapchat filter on our face, and it gives us cute little bunny ears and little goggles and whatever. That's awesome, right? We love that. People expect that transformation process before they even upload it. Now, they're interacting with it. Again, here's my device on the edge. I'm interacting with it. I took my picture. I got my Smelfie up there. I'm doing some transformation processing on it, right? So if it's Snapchat, I'm opening my mouth and a rainbow's coming out. Whatever. I've used Snapchat like very, very little overall. And so I'm applying some processes. Some of the process is image processing, right? So an image processing library like Intel RealSense, or some aspects of AI with some artificial intelligence that goes in there, smooths my creases down, takes away the beard, turns, degenderifies me, or makes me gender neutral. They certainly have some of those things that are out there. Whatever, it applies a mechanism, or applies a rule set, or a conditional set onto that data. Then the result is something that I'm going to go and post. And that's the last part of that. And that's the consumption part, even though we're talking about transformation. So take this back to the enterprise scale. So when my favorite guys over at Welker Farms are, as they're going through and they're looking at their data, as they're looking at the sensor data, there has to be something, if you just looked at the stream of data from rain sensors, it's binary. Not, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1. Is there rain? Is there not, right? What's the moisture content on a gradient scale? There's something that has to translate that raw machine code or that raw data feed into something that's useful. Or, I'm going to continue on with that example. So if I have multiple rain sensors out there, or multiple moisture meters, right, within a given field, then I can actually start to correlate that data as part of the transformation process. I take all that raw data in there, I transform it for consumption. And then the consumption side of that would be I create a scatter plot, or I create a layer on a geographical map or a GIS map that shows where more moisture content is in my fields than other areas, right? So I get a heat map kind of thing. That's an actual consumptive process. Transformation, so raw moisture data transformed, interpreting the data that's being created, and then the consumption part is what I'm able to see as a layer on a GIS map. That, my friends, is phenomenal, right? So transformation. So, that's agriculture. Transformation, looking at, raw streams of analytic data. So one of the jobs I used to do in my past was I worked for a retail solutions company, and we had people that would go into stores and, scan barcodes as part of that stuff. So you get a large amount of data back off of a simple, barcode, like on the back of a thing here, or we use alcohol. There's a barcode. You can scan that, and you get a wealth of data back. Well, that data is meaningless in the grand scheme of things, but I'm in that day and age, back in the olden times, that data was sent back to me and wasn't actually processed on the device. It was sent back, which is another type of edge to core to cloud type, operational modeling, but I would take that and I would clean up the data based on the variables that I wanted to see. Then the output of that, the transformation to the consumption, would enable our manufacturers that we represented to better plan for where their products need to show up on shelves in grocery stores or in pharmacies, or so on and so forth. Starting to get the process here. There's a lot of really good stuff that can come out of this for business. So we create the data, selfies, data generation. Use another example, Waze. We love to use Waze, right? Waze is constantly sampling our phone based on GPS position, so that's data creation. It's transforming that data because it takes that data and plots it back onto a map for Apple CarPlay or whatever you end up using. And then it also uses that as a social intelligence metric for, hey, we reported that there's 15 cops on the freeway between here and 5 miles down the road. Uses that and layers it on. And I consume that data as I'm driving. So, data creation, data transformation, data consumption. Now, a lot of these things, that data consumption, like I said, can happen. It always happens at an endpoint. It happens, most of the times for me, it's happening here. Where do I read my email? I create my emails here. I send my emails from here. It goes, bounces off a server somewhere in the ether, and it comes back, and I consume it based on here. When I take my selfie, not Smelfie, different thing entirely. When I take my selfie and I send it up to Snapchat, people are going to see it. They're going to consume it on their devices, right? But it's being housed in the cloud. So I'm less concerned about where my data is stored after the creation process. I'm less concerned about where the data is necessarily transformed after that creation process. For as much as possible, a lot of these things that we do, we establish them where we hope that they are being done in an area or a location that is close to the source of origin, right? When you start to get into stuff, advanced kind of connectivity options like Wi-Fi 6, right? So massive bandwidth. When you start to get into things like 5G, right? Where you have large amounts of bandwidth, low amounts of latency, right? So I can create and I can ship that off as fast as I create it. The thing that you want to do there is that if your device is incapable of powering that, and that's an entirely different conversation for an entirely different time, but if your device can't process that data as quickly as it needs to, you really want to spend less time with that data on the wire as possible, right? You want to calculate, you want to process, and you want to get that turned around as quickly as possible. And the reason why you want to do that is for example, I live in Massachusetts. I don't want to be sending my data to New York and have it being processed in New York and then returned to me, especially if it's a time-sensitive type thing. There's a latency, objective that I need to have, accomplished there. So all that to be considered, excuse me, getting over a cold. When I'm starting to do these type of processes, I want to process as much as possible closest to the source of origin, right? So you have the concept of mobile edge computing. That's a big thing that's out here. People conflate mobile edge computing with the edge, all the time. Drives me absolutely up a wall. Just the fact that you can compute doesn't mean that it has anything to do with what the edge is. It's just another function within the edge. I would argue that compute is the transformation process within the edge. It can be part of creation. It can obviously be part of consumption. But for the most part, that computing function is relegated to that transformation process, right? Where we have AI running on top of it, automation running on top of it, software that is fundamentally altering, so network function virtualization, those type of things that are fundamentally in there operating on and influencing the ability of data to be mutated, changed, made useful for consumption. It's a pipeline. It can be, certainly it can be used for creation as well. I would argue that if we want to go with mobile edge computing as a strict definition of what the edge is, then I have 2 desktop computers here that are mobile edge computing. And see, a lot of folks would disagree with the fact that I just said that because it doesn't classically orient itself to what we believe mobile edge computing to be. But fair enough. These are compute units, an Intel box and an AMD box. I'm an equal opportunity employer, and I've got ARM here, so we can argue all you want. They're compute devices. They live outside the data center. They live outside of the cloud. They're connected to a very large pipe, gigabit broadband from Verizon Fios. So for all intents and purposes, they're doing exactly what mobile edge computing states that, it should be. But we wouldn't necessarily sit around and call, these are client computers. Well, the clients are see the rat hole? It gets to be really annoying. Which is why even part of my day job, which is messaging, which is talking about these things, is understanding technology and translating into stuff that's livable and useful. Which is why I spend so large majority of my job, my day-to-day, just sitting here going, the edge, when we talk about the edge, it's great. I'm grateful for the Gartners, the IDCs, the Forresters, or whatever, the world. The problem is, when it comes down to, and you try to distill it down to a super specific definition of what the edge is, which, by the way, it's not mobile edge computing. You run the risk of alienating everything else that ends up happening there. So if it's mobile edge computing, then IoT is not edge. But most IoT devices are outside a data center. No shit, Sherlock. There you go. So let's have that argument. I'm an equal opportunity hater when it comes to specific definitions, which is why my definition of the edge is creation, transformation, and consumption. Right? Getting back to consumption. Well, that wild tangent we had there. Consumption is taking data that has been transformed. So the initial raw data we've consumed, we've created it, my beautiful mug. We've applied a filter to it. We've transformed it, and now we're going to consume it. It goes out on Snapchat, and everybody looks at Dave and goes, "Oh, why would I ever look at Dave on Snapchat?" However, that consumptive model works for some people. I mean, think about it as like the Tinder phenomena. I'm putting my junk out there not quite literally. I'm not on Tinder, so I'm putting my junk out there for everybody to see. It's a consumption model. Actually, Tinder makes a shitload of money off of your back if you want to do that kind of stuff. Why? Because they encourage the fact that it's a meat market. You're going to swipe through and you're consuming things based on that. But it takes me uploading my picture, writing my bio, or whatever it is, and putting it out there in order for you to be able to consume it. Well, guess what? There's a consumption model at the edge. And where am I doing that? I'm not doing it for my desktop computer. I mean, this was an application that was specifically designed to live in the edge. It wasn't designed with some tangential hooks to the cloud, right? Because we had to store it somewhere. Not everybody's going to have the full catalog of every single picture that's ever been on Twitter or Tinder or Twitter for that matter either. Gosh, can you imagine? So a lot of what you're seeing is there are dependencies and there are hooks between the edge and the cloud. There's a lot of hooks and dependencies between the edge and the core. But the predominant aspect or predominant area where the edge stands alone is that matter is created, transformed, and consumed here. All right. So data at rest sitting in Dropbox in the cloud, it's data at rest there. But I am working on it. I am transforming it whenever I update a document or upload a photo. I am doing that from my location on the edge. Right, so the cloud has a hook into it, but you think of it as a merged ecosystem, right? And things coming together. So, what is the edge? Again, if you want to stun your friends with, brevity and simplicity, the edge, whenever somebody mentions that within a technical context, is the area or the aspect where we create, we transform, and we consume data, right? And if they ask for an example of a company that, lives fully in the edge, just point to your common everyday apps that you use on your phone. I mean, most of them are monetized to be used by users. I mean, think about gaming. Gaming on my phone is completely designed around the edge. It has some hooks into the cloud, but again, tangential. Most of everything it does exists right here. It wants me to interact with my device here. And it relies on latency. So a lot of these, if you go on Twitch and if you look at, some of these pro streamers with Fortnite. Fortnite is an edge application. It's a game. It relies on some servers back in the cloud, which is awesome. So we're utilizing our edge connectivity back into the cloud. So gigabit bandwidth, whatever. Low latency stuff. Imagine when 5G kicks on and we're all wireless. And woo! Wow, the world's really going to turn on its axis even faster. But we're interacting. Everything we do is interacting socially here on the edge. It's not interacting, our interaction with the cloud is very, very minimal. It's pushing updates. In fact, most of these services are designed to lower the amount of latency that there is between the edge and the cloud because they realize that hop is such a pain in the ass to get to. The Stadia controller for Google. Why did they make that Wi-Fi enabled? To limit the amount of latency that there would be between actions that you're doing on your controller and how it would end up in the cloud. How it would interact with the cloud. You got to have an edge environment that's sensitive to it, that's built to sustain that kind of connectivity back into the cloud. Again, they're all interdependent, but there's definitely certain segregation. There is segregation between the edge, the core data center, and the cloud, and how it gets used. So again, I will say it ad nauseum, and you can come up to me at VMworld if you want to talk to me at VMworld. I guess I will be there. And say, Dave, what's your definition of the cloud? I'm gonna of the edge. I'm gonna go up to you. I'm gonna go. The edge is creation, transformation, and consumption of data. Woo! And there's my 30-minute live stream and/or video blog post, because I think I might turn this into a blog. Anyway, folks, it's been real. It's been fun. It's been real fun. So I hope you guys have an awesome evening. And I will talk to you later.